All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still talking about devolution, whether it has worked or not. The COG chair is supposed to give an address, a devolution address, later on today. But that's a question. I see your views coming. We'll talk about them in just a bit. But Kevin, you brought up this issue of on-source revenue, and I'd also like to talk about the elephant in the room, pending bills. So why is it that counties are unable to do this? Because everybody says that you need to plan for money that you have. Even if that money doesn't come in an ordinary household, if you take something, then you pay for it. Why has it been a problem based on what you've been looking at in terms of counties? Why aren't they able to clear pending bills, which is now running close to $1 trillion if you combine plus the national government?
I think one of the biggest challenges, Trevor, is just the planning process, as you rightfully said, because we expect that counties will be able to, one, advertise for service providers to render services that are required by the county for that particular point in time. And that once you make that advert, you really need to be sure that you have the resources. Now, a lot of what happens in counties, twofold. One is who do you know? And former governors are here, current governor, DG, and a senator. And that has been one of the biggest challenges, to the extent that a number of people that we have talked to, and we have tried to engage with now very well organized service providers from different counties, because they are meeting, they have their own unions, and they are trying to appeal to county governments to pay them. And it's even shocking that within that particular network, there are people who still get paid because of the advocacy that is taking place around this conversation on pending bills, because of their proximity to power. So you ask yourself, okay, so what is the issue here? Is it that the county does not have money to pay for the pending bill? Or is it that I don't know the right person to push my papers? And then there are people who have actually decided to forfeit. In some areas, we've had families having to even bury their loved ones because of stress, tension, and the fact that they just cannot be able to pay. Change of lifestyles. You know, people have had to be pushed out of their homes. People's houses have been auctioned by, debt collectors, among others. Now, to the core of the issue is that counties will have to, in my view, one, even as we talk about the pending bills verification committees, as was proposed by the Council of Governors and the Deputy President, to look at not just the validity of the bills, because there is no one who can come to you to ask for money on services which they did not render. But why that issue is coming up is because of shortcuts. There are people who actually given jobs, yet they never applied for them. In fact, they were never even shortlisted, but they were given those jobs. So if you start verifying the process, the county owes those individuals, but the process within which they got the jobs or the tenders was not properly followed, which therefore balloons the pending bills process. And that's partly why some people get paid and others don't get paid. But because they're in a network and they're in WhatsApp groups, they will post, I was paid on this date, at least I got some little resources from the county governments, etc. So I think that moving forward, and as we celebrate 10 years of devolved system of governance, is to look at, do we really follow the process to the letter and its spirit? And if that is what we are doing, then how do we now begin to look at the pending bills which are present, the process of paying them, and do we now want to say that we are going to be withholding services to citizens, whether there are services that need to be rendered by service providers, as we seek to clear these pending bills? But Trevor, you also remember that just ahead of the past financial year, counties were asked to prioritize payment of pending bills. And that also brought in a number of issues, because then it meant that certain services would not be procured, certain services would not be rendered. So it is for the DG Machakos, because he's a current player, to probably share with us what are some of the mechanisms that counties are putting in place to be able to deal with pending bills, which in fact for county governments are almost ballooning to about, I think is over 159, almost 160 billion shillings, with I think Nairobi County being the highest, county with the highest amount of pending bills to service providers. And
Wangamati, what is the problem here? Because what people don't understand, in your own household, if you're going to do a budget, and if somebody offered you services, you can't bring in another service before you pay that other one. How is it that people can have pending bills spanning years? And yet you do, if there's every financial year, why don't you clear the pending bills first of the last financial year, even though the money is not sent on time, and then you procure other services?
Thank you, Trevor. Before I just talk about the issue of pending bills, let me just sort of add to what Prof was saying about devolved functions.
Yeah.
And just to say that we still have a lot of issues, because if you just look at the two ministries, agriculture and health, like in the last budget, the national budget for health, the Minister of Health, Trevor, is about 150 billion shillings. That is meant for policy and monitoring of whatever is going on nationally. Whereas the total budget for health in all the 47 counties is about 130 billion shillings. And this is a function that is devolved. It just tells you that we have a fundamental problem, because you have this function that is devolved. All the counties, the entire budget is 130 billion. A national government that is supposed to just to do coordination, the budget is about 150 billion shillings. So there is a problem there. Now, Trevor, coming back to the issue of pending bills, and I want to say this, that the issue of pending bills is a very serious problem. As Kevin has mentioned, as at now, the entire pending bills for counties is about 160 billion shillings. For national government, it's just under about 500 billion shillings. So there is a fundamental problem. And as a result of that, we're having a lot of business people being auctioned because of this issue of pending bills. And in my own view, 3 reasons why we have pending bills, whether it's at a national level or at counties. One, this issue of late disbursements. Like now, I heard the president saying that they have now cleared, disbursing all the entire monies for 2022-2023 financial year to counties. But 2 or 3 months allocation of that money is coming in June. Yeah? So these guys will not be able, Mwangangi is here, they will not be able to disburse that money. They will not be able to pay that money. Okay? What happens is that then this money is rolled over. Then you have to do a supplementary budget to bring it back before now you start paying. So that creates pending bills. Secondly, the other source of pending bills is where counties say, look, if I give an example, Bungoma County, you say in this financial year, you are going to raise about, say, 2 billion shillings. You budget, you plan, you expense based on 2 billion shillings. But then you end up raising 1 billion or 1.5 billion shillings. So there's a shortfall there, okay? So that, again, ends up creating unrealistic budgets that you come up. So that creates a pending bill. The third one, which is also a very fundamental issue, Trevor, is normally successive administrations, and this Prof will maybe come in and comment on it, that you have now a governor leaving the office. He has some pending bills. Now you have a new governor coming in. Now this new governor coming in then now wants to forget about all these pending bills. That again creates a problem, and I think we need a law on that, because I've seen it's a very fundamental problems. So those 3 issues are the ones that actually create pending bills, and we have a serious, like the last one, the last issue that I'm talking about, where a new governor comes in and then, he says, look, I want to audit this. And then he audits. Then, some guys are put aside, because of maybe political differences or whatever it is. I think it is an issue that we must deal with, because governments are successive. You should not, if somebody provided a service in a previous government, or a previous administration, and maybe he was not your friend, they should not be punished for that. And I think that is also creating pending bills. And I think that is...
And Wako, let's talk about that for a bit, because you also brought up the issue of corruption. Is that also the main problem here? That somebody comes in and it depends on who you know, then yours can be fast-forwarded. Someone who worked 3 years earlier than you has not been paid. Then, as a senator, you were supposed to oversight the counties. What was so difficult to ensure that people are paid on time?
Yeah. Thank you, Trevor. You stopped me from getting into that earlier.
Now we get into it.
And I'm happy that you have given me the opportunity to comment on that.
Yes.
But before I come to that, there are some important areas that have been mentioned by my colleagues. Yes, the issue of pending bills is becoming a real problem in our country and in the counties. As His Excellency said, the transition government, you know, when you transit from one government to the other, people come in with a different, you know, mind and always ready and things, you know, you've been fighting over the campaigns and you feel that even the projects that was started by the former should be somehow suppressed and all these other things. But what they fail to understand is the people who have been given those jobs and the work to do are the people who may have even voted you in. And they have families to take care. And through the tender or through the projects, they have incurred a lot of expense. And if you look at our history now, in fact, that plays in a very negative way because families have lost their properties, people have been depressed, others have gotten into terminal illnesses, and it is quite huge because people even don't want to hear anything to do with any project to do with the counties just because of the negative impact that it has had. While on the other side, if you look at the procurement process and you see what the counties need to do, that is part of the growth that needs to happen at the grassroots level. And so if we are careful, because much of this grant is the conditional grant, and it is budgeted for. Every project is well budgeted for. So like in my county, I think there are some projects that, you know, were started in the first county government and up to today have not been completed. Now the second regime have also come in and the third now. So people have suffered in many ways. So for me, the idea of one government transiting and the project suffering with the former and the current beginning is on, we should come up with laws that can safeguard the people and how those projects, you know, will be started and finished, completed, and on time. The other thing is the corruption. Corruption plays a huge role. You know, before we used to blame only the national government for corruption, for corrupt practice and everything. But today, at the county level, you start corrupting somebody from the moment you get in. I think even the security guard there expects you to do something in order for you to be allowed in. The person at the reception desk expects you to do something so that you can see the boss. And the PA wants you to do something so that you can. So it is a corrupt system from the beginning to the end. And that has also exhausted Kenyans. I know very well that Kenyans are not happy with that. And even the people at the grassroots level, you may come for something else, not even a huge project, but even for you to get into that compound, you must do something for you to be allowed in. You must do something for you to be even booked for an appointment. So corruption has finished the devolved government. And unless we do something, unless our government now, and I know our president is very much focused on that area, and he wants to reduce corruption to a very, you know, low level, if not completely do away with it, because I do not want to say that we want to, because we have been saying that since independence and we have not achieved, but I know we are very focused on that. And so corruption, we should fight, we should start a new fight against corruption if we want our country to grow and if we want our counties to grow. Because anybody who gets there, you know, we have people who think that you can become a millionaire within a night. For those of us who are in this generation, you know, imagining to have $1 million in your account took us centuries, quite some good time. And we worked very hard for us to get there. But today, young people like you, you know, just sit on the computer, do some work, and imagine that they can become billionaires, not even millionaires. So that attitude is forcing people to go extra mile and do all that they can so that they can gain and they can become rich within no time.
But as a former senator yourself and practicing oversight, and I know you're not the investigative agencies or anything, but why was it so difficult to hold the county governments accountable? Because we've seen this even in Siaya right now. The deputy governor says this, is all of a sudden taken to the Senate, is impeached, is taken here and there. So why has it been so difficult for the oversight team, senators like yourself, which you served as a senator before, to hold these county governments to account?
You know, we have institutions in place to deal with that, and Senate is part of that because Senate plays overall oversight. And the problem is, even by the time somebody is being impeached, you cannot be sure whether this person will be fully impeached or not, because by the time the cases, you know, are followed and all the files brought and everything, evidence, you know, the case gets diluted in between, and you are not able to finish. And of course, we have people who have been mentioned as the most corrupt people, and still leading and still governing and still doing so many things. And I think corruption is one thing that needs our serious attention, and we need to put systems in place. Anybody who has corruption case should be stopped from serving the nation and the people, because if you are in the office, you have a case and you continue serving, others will continue stealing and doing corruption in their own ways, and they will not be dealt with.
All right. And Prof, what is the best way of dealing with this corruption? You yourself, you had a bit of a difficult time. You even thought of dissolving an entire county. So what is the best way of dealing with it?
I hope you are not expecting me to say that people should be shot.
No.
But maybe I could, like happens in China, maybe I could begin by just talking about the pending bills a bit. I think Wangamati has very clearly articulated where the problem comes from. And when it's a question of late disbursement, it means that people have to wait until there is a supplementary later, and normally about September, October. So you are supposed to have been paid by June. So you have to wait until September, October to be paid. And the bank where you borrowed from, you know, is not in a good mood. They're asking for payment and all the things that have been said, which look like dramatic, but, you know, people have really been very stressed and lost, you know, everything and all that kind of stuff. But for the national government, immediately the budget is passed. In July, somehow money starts getting disbursed for, you know, development work to continue. So that is something that perhaps needs to be looked at. Now, the question of on-source revenue, people exaggerating what they think they will make and then doing a budget which there's more development to show that they're working very hard. The control of budget as a mandate to really look at your budget and say, last year, you raised 100 million shillings. Why are you saying you are going to raise 500 million shillings? And I think that function should be strengthened so that people are realistic in terms of, you know, what kind of money they say they are going to raise. And it is important that the moment you realize that you had, quote, exaggerated your own source, then you need to do a supplementary, so that some of the things you have not procured, you get them out of the budget, so that you don't therefore have projects that you don't have money for. Now, one of the most serious, as Wangamati said, one of the most serious problems which gives rise to pending bills is if a new governor comes in and disregards the existing budget, and even when projects have been started, decides to do a supplementary to introduce new projects and eliminate ongoing projects. And obviously, there will be, you know, pending bills there. because the people who are already working, people who are procured, people who, you know, are some distance in terms of finalizing projects, and, you know, will not, now there will be no money, they will be told pending bill, maybe wait for another financial year you know, and that's a serious problem, and it's a problem of the transition of succession. People appreciating that governments are continuing. Whatever was promised to be done by one administration has to be taken through by another administration, even if they're from different political parties or whatever, whatever it is. But there's also another serious, a fourth area of creating pending bills. When people do projects that are unbudgeted, so that a governor wakes up and decides that, you know, this constituency or ward, you know, there are many votes there. And although there is no budget for something, for a road or for a hospital, I will announce to them that now we will have a hospital, road, and so on. So for now, those unbudgeted items, there will be pending bills. And actually, it's criminal to do things outside the budget. Or when there's been a budget, to remove things from that budget if they are ongoing. That is also criminal. So I think there needs to be a better understanding of how governments work so that, you know, things like that don't happen. Now, when it comes to corruption, I would myself, first of all, say it's not a preserve of counties. It is a national and county thing. So when we discuss it, we need to discuss it to say that this is a problem of both levels of government. And unfortunately, we are getting to situations where this is percolating to even the citizenry. So that before they vote, you know, you need to give me something. So that it is becoming quite a problem. And we have to be careful about weaponization of corruption. So that sometimes if you want to shut up some people whom, you know, you think they're against you, you have corruption charges and so on. That is an area where one has to also, you know, be careful. For me, to know whether there is significant corruption, I look at what is it that is happening. Like even Machakos, I can see, you know, development that is being done. And I can say to myself, a lot of the resources are being committed to this development. So if there are charges of the governor is being corrupt, I would say maybe that is more political than anything else, if you look at what is happening. But having said that, we really need to very seriously, as a country, look at this issue of corruption. For example, when I was a governor, I tried to say, since these are public resources and they need to do good for the public, why don't we have open contracting? And Wangamati knows a lot about that as a finance person. Why don't we have open contracting so that every information about your procurement, who is doing the evaluation, you know, all that information is in the public domain. So your staff know, if they do banking business, the evidence to take them to ACC and to take them to DCI, to take them to DPP, is actually within the system. So I think we need to go towards more openness in terms of our, particularly in the procurement department, how we procure and all that, so that there is less opportunity for, you know, what our women rep, you know, was saying happens. And one thing that I thought also was very helpful was when people finish projects, you put them in a queue. So that you say that this one has finished first, this one has finished subsequently. So if you pay somebody who is ahead, then, you know, the officers would have, you know, they would have to, you know, face questions. Why are you paying somebody who is not first on the queue? And I really think these people who are beginning to provide services, including youth and women and persons with disability, 30% of procurement, if you don't, you know, pay them as is, and you're expecting, you know, from little profit some kickback,
Yeah.
Then that is also destructive of devolution. So as we say,
Yeah.
there have been gains.
Yeah.
One has to look at the other side and say, these are the problems.
Yes.
And we need to really seal these loopholes, and there are many,
Yeah.
because the system is new, so that we have, you know, we give devolution a chance.
Yeah. And Mwangangi, you're the deputy governor right now in Machakos, and they've enumerated how these pending bills come up. But why is it, a simple question, why is it so hard to pay people who worked fast, like what Prof is saying? Somebody who worked in 2011, they're still waiting for their money in 2023. Why is it so difficult to just have a system whereby the moment you worked, you're paid?
In the case of Machakos, and thank you, Professor, for citing our county, that is exactly what we are doing. And that is what Our Excellency Governor Abinadeti is doing. And I can attest, I can say it again and again, that is trying to exercise nature of fairness. Now, on top of what has been said about pending bills, I think there is the issue also of compliance with the law. This country has a procurement law. And I think it dictates that before you purchase this pen, you need to ensure first it is in the procurement plan. 2, ensure there is budget for it. So somehow, almost slightly 60, 70, 80% of pending bills, I think somebody committed a crime, whether national or county, and that person needs to be held to account. Now, sometimes as we discuss these kind of things, there is an aspect that we don't take care of, and this is politics.
Yeah.
You don't expect me, I go somewhere, for example, if I were a governor, like Kibuda and Wangamati, you know, these are leaders who are popularly elected. And most of the time, I sympathize with my governor, because we go somewhere in a public rally or in a public meeting, in a public engagement, and you hear people say, you know, you promised us this. And the queue continues from one meeting to another.
Yeah.
Now, there is something these two good governors will tell you. Before you come up with any development of the county, you must do county integrated development plan.
Yes, the CIDP.
Some of the things you are said to have promised might not be in that plan. But you are required to do them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do them, it is democracy. We will know how to deal with you in the next election. We will just wait.
Yeah.
So somehow the nature of our politics also plays a lot, because you put a lot of pressure to these elected leaders. And you know, there is also a period. These 5 years is not a lot of time. Like now we are talking about 4 years.
Yeah.
And for development is only 2 years. Because after that it is serious political business.
Yeah.
So in this case, somehow we need to be realistic. Because you don't expect, like from now, I have several engagements.
Yeah.
And all those things I will get from there, I will take them to the governor or to the respective departments within the county. And sometimes you also pressurize these officers. And out of it, they will end up committing to doing them.
Yeah.
Somehow, sometimes out of the plan, but to satisfy the demand from the population.
Okay.
So, I think, I don't know, but my point is we need compliance to the dictates of the law. Yes.
Okay. And Wangamati, I'll start with you on this one, and then I'll come to Kevin. One of the most abused issues is the AGPO one, access to government procurement opportunities, which is allowing youth, women, persons with disability, 30% of all procurement in counties. Now, that is where all the abuse has been. What is the possible way of ring-fencing this to spur economic growth to the people who are intended to get this? Because there are accusations that it's just a matter of getting a few of your relatives who are young and then passing money through them. We've even seen EACC now holding an entire couple's houses left, right, and center. Why has that been easily abused, and how can it be ring-fenced? Okay,
thank you, Trevor. Before I come to that, Trevor, let me just also comment on the issue of corruption. And I think it is very, very important, Trevor, that we are very honest as a country. And I like what Prof was saying, that there is a lot of focus saying corruption is a lot in the counties. But I can tell you for a fact, corruption is now in the DNA of Kenyans. It is in the DNA of Kenyans. And I can tell you, even now, even in the private sector, corruption is rearing its head there. We are having a fundamental problem. As much as we talk about corruption at the county level, it's there, and I don't want to deny. The one thing that I can also tell you is that the accountability level of corruption, the accountability level at the counties is higher than at a national level. The reason is that when you are doing things nearer to the people, people will see what you are doing. People will question what you are doing. People will understand what you are doing. So if anything goes wrong, it's easier for them to ask that question. A 1 shilling spent at the county level is more accountable than 1 shilling spent at a national level. And we have institutions. And you asked my woman rep, as a Senate, when she was a former Senate, why they were not able to oversight counties. Because corruption is also in the Senate. I'm just being factual. Corruption is also in the Senate. It is in Parliament. Yeah. So this issue of corruption is a big issue. And now it's in the private sector.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Today, even if you go to you want whatever you want in a private organization, I'm sure even a citizen here it's there. Trevor. So it's a fundamental problem. Now, coming back to the issue that you're talking about, the marginalized groups, where the Constitution clearly says that 30% of all tenders should be reserved for people living with disability, for youth, for women, and I know it's happening. The problem that we have is, and I think it is a fundamental problem, that all these groups are actually not enjoying those benefits. We find most organizations, a contractor who is, an NCA 1, or an NCA 2, or an NCA 3, but is participating in the other contract tenders. But he has also registered a company that has a youth, that has a woman, that has a man living with disability, and, tendering all this. My view is, I will go back to what Prof was saying, that we need to endeavor to have an open system of procurement, that we know, we know and we monitor. And if this youth tender has gone to a company, we need to know which company it is, who are the directors, who are the shareholders, who are they, do they do the work? Because I think people just hide behind some of these companies. And I think it's important that we take a step further, because that part of the Constitution is not being realized, both at the national level and the county level.
Yeah, and Kevin, I'm sure you've had this before I come to Honorable Wako.
Sure.
What do the people tell you, the people who registered companies? And sometimes it's a genuine company, they're a young person, they can get a bit of credit financing here, but when they go to the counties, the jobs are not done.
Trevor, it goes back to corruption. And that's really the elephant in the room, and that's the excuse. Because remember what I said about who do you know? And as co-panelists have actually clearly outlined, that transitional form of governance that we have, so that you have this governor for this particular session having enlisted maybe a number of groups to engage with. And that is purely done to meet certain, to tick certain boxes, because it's part of the procurement process. You go to Controller of Budget, the Auditor General, they'll also ask you, how many groups did you give, these affirmative action programs or tenders? And so governments or government officials have deliberately made that decision to organize youth that they want to work with, to organize women or persons with disabilities. Whereas, in my view, it should be an open mechanism, so that you allow for anyone who sees something that they want to do, they apply for it, and you follow through due diligence, the process as clear as it can be, and you award them. But in fact, we have also had scenarios where people who have capacity have not been given jobs. And so what I would call them crude government officials would do is to enlist or clearly pick a few members from the organizations or groups or companies that have the capacity to deliver, and they side chat them. They side talk them and tell them, we'll merge you with this group, you work together because they don't have capacity, but we know them. You have capacity, we don't know you, but we want to use your papers. Yeah. Then you two will work together, we pay you, and then you find a way of agreeing on how you get your monies, which is purely a corrupt process. I think for me, in my view, Trevor, county governments and governments really need to ensure that they formalize the informal. So, of course, you have these youth groups, you have the women groups, you have the groups of basically marginalized groups. The desire to want to build the capacity should be the first dream, the first objective, so that regardless of whether they voted for you, regardless of whether they know you or they don't, have the desire to build their capacity. And it reminds me of something that Professor Kivutha Kibwana did to us in Makueni, because I was moderating the youth session for the devolution conference in Makueni. And he came to our breakaway session as a governor, and he was the only governor who sat in that session. And then when we went to the plenary and, the communique was being read, as a host governor who was then making some of the final remarks before, I think it was the president or the then chief guest, he said, but ladies and gentlemen, I was in the youth breakaway session. You have read the communique, but I didn't hear anything that the youth agreed upon. Why are you putting the youth in this conversation? And it really changed the whole document, And that really presents to me what I think people who have a higher power to make decisions need to adopt. That if you have been given the authority and the privilege to make a decision on youth, women, and persons with disabilities, be deliberate, not to want to be corrupt, not to want to exercise discrimination and favoritism. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, regardless of existence of laws, because we have Article 55, Article 100 of the Constitution, and some county assemblies have actually even been quite innovative to want to pass laws that then support these marginalized groups. But beyond that, I think the desire to be deliberate about how we engage with the marginalized groups really needs to be at the core of any government officer.
Honorable Wako, what is the best way of approaching this issue around AGPO? Because it's in the law, but somehow people have still found a way of circumventing it.
Yes. Number one, most of the people do not even know their right. They are marginalized, and affirmative action, we are supposed to take care of them, but they do not know their right. And they are easily compromised because of poverty, levels in our counties. You have women, you have young people who want to do some business, but do they have even the money to do that? And that is where the rich, those who are slightly better than them, take advantage of them. So civic education is quite good for people to be educated, so that every group will know their right, so that they can exercise their right and also gain through that. Number one is through civic education. In order to get or to help them in the poverty that is affecting them, we have to come up with a system that will empower these marginalized groups to access some funds, so that they can be able to do the business, the projects or the work they want to do, and then they pay back. And unless we we come up with a law to provide for that and also protect them, we may not be able to achieve, because the others will tell them, you have no capacity to borrow money. Surely they have no capacity to borrow money. And that is how they take advantage. So we have to come up with some laws so that they can have access to some funds, and they can be protected so that they can do this. Kenyans like taking advantage of others, and especially the poor. So if we can help people to be very patriotic, when you are patriotic, you would always want to do the right thing. In our case, people want to take advantage of others, and you want to worsen the situation while you want to better your situation. So it is good for us to be patriotic, to love one another, and see how best we can grow each other, instead of suppressing others, and you grow yourself, and you know that is how we continue increasing the gap between the rich and the poor. And so it is high time for us now as a country to see how these marginalized groups can be empowered financially and can be protected legally, so that they borrow money, they do the business, they get whatever little they get, and they refund the money they have borrowed.
Prof, so what is the best way of dealing with that? And it's interesting what Wako is raising, because there's the issue of capacity building, and then there's the issue of productivity. Fine, a youth group brings you the paperwork, they're registered, there is a full company, but you know for sure they cannot deliver on this. And you're the one who, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. You want them to deliver, but you know they cannot. So you end up looking for someone who you know has the capacity to actually do that road, build that dam. So what kind of capacity building then is needed to empower the young people so that even if their paperwork is right, they can still do the job?
Yes, even as one talks about the capacity issue, I think the problem that has been underscored of other people using the youth and women and persons with disability, other marginalized, to actually source the work. I think that's one of the most serious issues that we have, so that we are in a situation where we are not targeting the real beneficiaries. And of course, when they are told, you know, just apply, because I had occasion to be, you know, somebody senior comes and tells you, you know, my son and my daughter have brought papers, make sure that they get the job, and I will do it satisfactorily. And of course, that is not how it is supposed to be. So I think there needs to be that kind of scrutiny. And of course, one of the biggest problems is they're accessing credit, you know, or a bank being able to say that we will give you money, and when the county pays, the county will pay to us in the first instance. So they have a serious issue about credit, and I don't know whether this new fund, the Hustler Fund, will be able to help them get substantial monies to be able to do things like that. And any other government, you know, funds, as they also go to the private sector. I think it is important to, first of all, get these young people, the women, and so on, who are starting, because even those who are adults, you begin somewhere, and you begin small in terms of engaging in business, if that is what you feel is required. But today, there are very many NGOs, even within government, people who try to help people who are just beginning into entrepreneurship, including social entrepreneurship. So I think it is important to, first of all, get young people who say, and women who say, who are beginners, who say that they want to get into business, because business is not for everybody, to help them, first of all, have, you know, the skills of, you know, you do your business plans, how, you know, eventually you do accounting, how you do your tax, how you do all those things.
So you identify specific groups.
You ask who wants to do it. And therefore, you are able to now get them through some process of the nuts and bolts of how this is done. And of course, we are focusing on AGPO, which is both national government, which is county, and one has to look at CDF. Because in CDF, actually, if you get, for example, Makueni has 6 constituencies, and a lot of the CDF money is development money. But the development money from the county might be almost equal the development money of the CDF in totality. So again, you have to also look at how is AGPO, you know, working there. How is AGPO working there? And that's why the point which was made about beneficial ownership. To really look at who owns this, who owns a company. And we used to have an association of contractors. so that they are able to tell you, yeah, you know, this is not Agupo.
Yeah.
You know, this is the front. This is a front for, you know, because they know each other.
Yeah.
And a lot of scrutiny. But I think it's very, very important to have, you know, that good system of ensuring that our young people, our, you know, women, our persons with disability, any other marginalized people can access, you know, this procurement and an avenue, or apart from employment, you know, for raising, you know, a livelihood.
Okay.
I think that's very important.
All right. Well, Mwangangi, practically speaking, so you meet a young man in Machakos, and you know, you don't know him anywhere, you just know he's a young man in Machakos. He has his paperwork. You'd like to help him. Of course, you know the people who have capacity. That will still be considered corruption. So you meet a young man and you say, I will help you, because you see that at the end of the day, you want his company to do something, so that at least he gets, even if it's not 100% of the profit, because you're looking for someone else to help him, you're hoping the 40% of the profit that he gets will then allow him to start building his own company. But that in itself is another avenue of corruption. So how do you balance that? How do you deal with it? And this is why you're saying that the politics of it all also comes in. Because this is a practical approach. You're just helping this young man, but that is corruption.
It is. Okay. Trevor, what a wonderful topic this very morning.
Yeah.
Allow me, please, and kindly, just less than 30 seconds, I comment on something. This country has a lot of resources. And 10 years of devolution, we saw indirectly an attempt to try to slow down devolution in one way or the other. Now, today, most of the national government ministries and the departments that are doing what counties are supposed to be doing, you can compare those resources and you will find actually it is almost double what counties are doing. If you combine water, irrigation, agriculture, and health, you will still find a challenge. And why I brought this issue back after it was well dispensed of by Governor Wangamati is because at national level, you will find most of these projects will not go to every part of the country. But if we devolve these resources to the counties, you are sure these resources will reach almost every part of the country. Yeah. I plead with this new government going forward, because this is a challenge they are inheriting.
Yeah.
Maybe they can see the best way to ensure these resources follow the functions to the counties. Thank you. Now, to your question, I think there is something I want to advise our youth. In Makueni, they had an association of contractors. For the youth, you need to come together. Your strength is in your unity to demand some of these things. Paul Kioni has come up with a very good, compelling Dictatorland book. And in that book, he says, if today you have a finance minister at the county level, at national level, who knows what he or she is doing, chances are high that single person can reduce corruption to almost 60–70%. How do you do it? There is something, I don't know whether when the history of this country is written, we will remember very well what Professor Kifuta Kibwana did in Makueni. The issue of public engagement, the issue of public participation, real, not imagined, real. If today I stand somewhere as a finance minister in charge of finance in Machakos County and I articulate, I say, we are going to do this road somewhere and this road costs this much. Already the residents know how much it costs. And they get involved from the start to the end as the project is implemented. Now to the youth, coming together is one thing. Articulating your interests is another. So this particular coming together of the youth, they will exercise their power and influence.
Yeah.
And they will demand to know who is the owner of the beneficiaries of 30%.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are going far and we are not telling the truth. Sometimes even the people in power are owners of the organizations, companies that implement this 30%. And it is not only implementing 30%, it is also goes a long way to know where they come from. Sometimes they could be people from around where the headquarters is. Yeah. We need to also to uplift others from far-reach rural areas.
Yeah.
In the case of Machakos, we are fortunate. We are both rural and urban county. We need to know who from which part of the rural area is a beneficiary of this 30%, because it is a huge a resource that can transform our youths. And again, I think I will also talk of sensitization and capacity building.
Yeah.
We need to do more in sensitizing our youth, because my colleagues will agree with me. Countries or nations that have transformed and grown to economic prosperity started at a very local level. Like now what we are doing, this 30%, a company starts at village level.
Yeah.
It is incubated at that level. It grows, and then they are shown the way, like they can export to starting with the neighboring counties, then you go to the neighboring countries, and even you go global.
Yeah.
So I think if we can sensitize our youths, we put good skills and knowledge and motivate them. They can be very good innovators, very good creators who will aid in fighting poverty in this country and the creation of wealth.
Yeah, Wangamati, I see you have some burning comment on this.
Not really on that, but I think I just wanted to make a quick comment. I know you're running out of time.
Yeah.
That one issue that has been burning for counties, and I thought Mwangange will raise it, but he didn't, is that the central government, the national government, is still control the payment process. That today, if you want to make a payment, if you want to make a payment from Bungoma, somebody has to travel, Trevor, from Bungoma to the control of budget, get approval in the control of budget, then from the control of budget, you go to the central bank, get approval in the central bank before payment is done.
Manual traveling.
Yeah. Manual travel. There's Mondays that are lost. Allowances are being paid, because if somebody has to travel from Bungoma to Nairobi, they will probably then claim about 3 or 4 days of allowances. I think it is high time, as we improve the governance framework in this country, it's high time that we move away from this manual system, so that if it is decentralized, you have decentralized the powers and responsibilities, but you have not decentralized the payment process. And I think that, to me, is a very fundamental issue. Yeah. Lastly, Trevor, just 1 minute, that one of the things that we didn't mention, one of the biggest challenges, and I think Prof brought it up, but we didn't dwell on it, is that when you look at the resources that are coming from national government and going to the county government, and in relation with the functions that the county government are doing, they're not adequate. And I think as we develop with the challenges that we have, I think successive governments has been speaking about increasing resources, and that's what Mwangange was, increasing resources to counties. I think it is high time that we actually increase resources to counties. Yeah. I think it's going to be a big thing for counties. It's going to be a big thing for this country. When you look at just number of the numbers, I mean, when you just look at what is happening across the world, in Nigeria it's 50-50. They have 3 levels of 3 levels of government. They have the federal, states, and then local. But when you take local plus states, it is 50% national, 50% counties. Japan is 35 national, 65 counties. You look at India, it's 60 national, 40 counties. You look at Brazil, it's 55 national, 45. I think it is important, Trevor, that we start thinking as a country that we move towards more decentralization of resources to counties, and it will have a huge impact on economic development.
In your former capacity, when you're in the COG as well, and you engage the national government on these issues, because sometimes what you're saying is actually very practical. If the budget for health is 150 billion at national and 130 billion for all the counties, and yet it's a devolved function, isn't it obvious that more money should go there? What do they say?
It is, and Prof. is here. We have had a lot of discussions on this, Trevor. You know, we have had a lot of discussions, and even what Prof mentioned, recently there was an attempt, I mean, I saw it in the papers, I saw it in discussions, that, you know, that they move the human resource aspect from counties back to national, you know, devolving again back to national government. And it is a problem. Because when you look at the functions of the Minister of Health at a national level, what is it?
It's policy.
It is policy mainly. But they have a budget of 150 billion shillings in the current budget. The entire budget for counties is about 130 billion Kenya shillings. So there's a fundamental problem. So we can devolve more resources to counties, and it will have a huge impact in terms of service delivery to our citizens.
Prof?
Yes.
Because you tried to engage the national government as well. What do you think is the problem? Is it just they've simply just refused? Or is it a misunderstanding?
I think we still have to really get ourselves as a country to accept the logic of devolution, to accept that this decentralization, devolution is actually the most effective way if you want to have a bottom-up approach. The best way to achieve that, one of the best ways to achieve that is actually through the devolution. And I'm not saying this, I'm saying this, you know, because it's factual. And I think Wangamati was able to demonstrate in other jurisdictions how much, you know, funds go into the devolved units. And there's been talk throughout of 35% at the minimum, whether it's in BBI, whether it is in whatever fora. And, you know, in the manifestos of political parties, they say the minimum 35%. I think we need to bite that bullet and get the 35% and even go beyond just the 35% to say that there will be so much percentage, like we used to argue in COG, so many percent for like youth activities, women activities, agriculture, you know, health, so that you don't get money and then you do things and not focus on the most important things. But having, you know, say that, I think there are certain things that need to happen very quickly. For example, get COG secretariat in law. To make sure that this intergovernmental relations, because actually it isn't, it's very informal, and it works with the summit, with the president. So that is
based on goodwill, essentially.
Precisely. That is an important thing to do. The economic blocks, there was a policy that was being developed, but that policy was kind of abandoned. And that's something that needs to come back so that several counties can do the bigger things, you know, they can do the bigger things together. And sometimes when Madam Wako was in Senate, sometimes there is what we don't understand. Senate and governors are, you know, they're having problems and they're not, you know, working properly. Yes, to be held accountable, but it doesn't mean that there must be like a fight. Sometimes counties, the county executive, county assemblies, national government, counties, you know, we need to transcend those kind of differences so that we know that this devolution thing is for all of us. And I think counties are supposed to have a county, 70% of people from there, 30%, you know, people from other parts of Kenya. And even if the law has to be changed so that there can be inter-county transfers, so that each county also is like Kenya. It is not just a county of the Wakambas, a county of the, you know, the other group. And civil servants in the counties need to be protected. Like now when another governor comes in, you know, the governor asks who was working with the previous governor. You know, I want to shun them aside because, you know, they are not good people. Because in democracies, the public service is protected, and it is the carrier of values, it's the carrier of the memory. And that sometimes is not happening within our situation. And finally, if, like Ukambani, for example, the dominant party as of now is Wiper. You know, you can go to maybe Western, maybe it is ANC and Ford K. Maybe you can go to Rift Valley, maybe there's that. You see, even the government in those areas, in the county level, is a Wiper government, is a UDA government, and so on. So it's not just at the national level where you have a Kenya Kwanza Alliance government, so that even those now parties need to be held accountable. What are your governors doing to realize devolution in that space where you control? So that is not just Senate and Auditor General holding counties accountable. Even those parties are held accountable for the delivery of services there.
Okay, we're really running out of time here, but I want to give you each a minute for closing remarks. But there's a lot of feedback coming through. Let's read that really quick and see what you're saying. At Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak, and then I'll give my panelists a chance just to give quick closing remarks here. Nixon says, even though devolved territories have the power to make legislation relevant to the area, that's granting them a higher level of autonomy, county governments don't seem to believe in themselves, hence over-relying on the national government, okay? Angela Razaro says, tough questions from Kenyans. Governors are really immune to any form of investigations. Is EACC really mandated to expand their wings to the counties? Okay. Kenyan Hair says, ask the former governors, why is it that road construction has been given priority unlike agriculture in all counties? Why is health system always unhealthy? Right. Okay, they'll give that in their closing remarks. Bran Chemwa says, I agree with Governor Wangamati that granting greater fiscal autonomy to counties empowers them to generate and manage their own revenue, reducing their dependence on central government funding. This can be achieved through revenue sharing arrangements and taxation powers. Okay? Barros says, devolution is a good idea but has not been fully implemented. It has brought some services closer to the people. The major problem is graft cases, which delays development and leads to poor service delivery. Yeah. Honorable Lilian Sioi says, well, the president has strategic plans on how he can work with county governments so that the health facilities are well equipped. Okay. Samuel Wood says, our disease is centralizing everything under the presidency. You can't have equitable development with this approach. Devolution has ensured all counties get an equal share of the state resources and prioritize their development needs. J.M. Musoma says, Parliament should amend election laws and stop governors or DGs who have served a term or two from contesting or being nominated as senators to protect devolution. It's prejudicial to serve in committees that oversight the expenditure or scrutinize the audit reports. Interesting. Mugire Jasper says, devolution is doing very well. Total budget is about 350 billion. Not much they can steal. Threat to devolution is from national government. Why does MOH get 150 billion yet health is devolved? National government remains with 3+ trillion. Our focus should be there. Okay? Kevin, closing remarks, 2 minutes.
And actually, what the message that you've read lastly is part of what we are currently working on. Yeah. In terms of looking at the functions that are devolved, but yet are still being held at the national level. And you've already started looking at, because counties are now just closing their finance and budget processes, looking at what is devolved and how much have you allocated for those services against what is being left at the national level. And we're already beginning with health, because, for instance, as much as the viewer has the opinion that the president has very good proposals, the latest conversations in Naivasha were that you look at, for instance, medical equipment purchase and supply, which has been a big issue between national and county governments for health, the health sector. And then what we call the fifth, which basically looks at the funding that county governments are giving to services at the county level, and a big chunk of that resource is still being left at the national level. So we're asking the question, why is that discrepancy, and what is it that we can be able to? And we want to do that for health, for water, for education and all the way to infrastructure.
Okay.
Lastly, Trevor, is of course the upcoming devolution conference,
Yeah.
which will be taking place in Uasin Gishu, and a number of the issues that we've been grappling here, particularly on issues around devolution of resources, on source revenue, and the existence of regional economic blocks. And in our view, we are of the opinion that if you can be able to build the capacity of counties in a region and push them to even have one industry, so that all the effort is in putting, if you go to Lake region, for example, have a fish industry where about 6 of the counties around the Lake region, or the 14 in the Lake region economic block, can be beneficiaries of that.
Okay.
So these are some of the conversations that, even as we talk about climate change and service delivery for counties in the devolution conference, and what counties need to do to be centers of devolved governance and, of course, high economic growth. What else can we do? And then lastly is accountability for citizens. Where are the voices of citizens in pushing for services, allocation of resources, and even protecting county officials, as Professor Kibaki?
Okay. Wangamati, closing remarks?
Yeah, thank you very much, Trevor. Just once again say that over the last 10 years, I think devolution is working. We have seen a lot of changes at the local level. Second, Trevor, one fundamental thing that we must deal with as a country is to see how we can devolve more resources to counties. Looking at the national budget this year, 2023-2024, 3.6, 3.7 trillion Kenya shillings. What is going to counties is about 370, 10% of that. So I think we need, like what Prof said, we need to hold our elected leaders to account to their manifestos. When they talk of 35%, we must ensure that. Thirdly, to spur all this, I think when we were at the COG, there were the issues about what Prof spoke about, regional economic blocks. I think it's important that the legislation is done so that we see more where counties can pull resources together and do major projects together under regional economic blocks. Otherwise, it's working.
All right. Honorable Wako, closing remarks?
Thank you once again. Mine is just to say that Kenya is a blessed country. We have a lot of resources that other countries do not have. We keep praising, other countries like Israel. Even if you go to this Arab world, our people go there for benchmarking. You just pocket the allowances and you don't implement. So Kenya is blessed in many ways, and it is a wealthy country. But what we have lacked is we are not good at taking care of our resources, and accountability has not been there. We are not good stewards. And mine is just to encourage anybody who has the responsibility of being somewhere, a leader, a honorable member, you must be able to be good stewards and take care of the resources that God has placed in our hands, and then make sure that you are effective in your service delivery. Because what Kenyans are lacking now is service delivery. People are there, resources are there, and getting to the people at the grassroots. The problem is not everywhere. So we must get to the people so that they can feel the impact of devolution. And lastly, I must say that we must be accountable. And if we are good if we put in place that, then the issue of corruption, we will be able to reduce. And let us all say, Mheshimiwa said that it is in our DNA. That means even those of us who are here, it is there. So we must get it out of our DNA and make sure that we reduce it completely.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, again, thank you very much, Trevor, for this opportunity. I like really the comments that came out there, because it means that Kenyans are very engaged and they know the issues, and that's a good thing for our democracy, for our devolution. One thing that maybe we didn't emphasize on quite a bit is the functions at the county. They should be supported by policy and laws, so that there is that framework. Apart from national policy and law, there is that framework for making sure things get done properly. And that emphasis of working with the youth, public participation, locally led development, that will realize the dream of devolution. And finally, we tried in Makueni to subject ourselves to the equivalent of African peer review mechanism. There is a county a peer review mechanism, and that would be a good thing to happen you know, so that we make it a culture in all our counties. And actually, I left at the point where we had done everything in terms of the county, and now we needed other governors to be now part of that process to help us. And that kind of review, apart from Senate and Auditor General and so on, I think is an important thing to achieve.
All right. His Excellency Mwangangi, closing remarks.
Thank you. Economist Paul Kioni talks of if you want to transform a region, a country, or even a continent, he says there are factors that lead to this. One of them is obviously infrastructure. Devolution has done tremendous in doing a lot of infrastructure, whether in the health sector, in roads, in water, and I think today's topic is well timed. Okay. I want to say we are being unfair to devolution. And I want to appeal to our parliament, national parliament, to change this requirement that we are allocating resources to counties based on the last audited accounts, yet national government, we are doing current. Let's use what we are doing at national level.
All right.
Let's be fair to our devolution. Number two is I want to thank the Senate. We had a case before them involving William Oduol, Dr. William Oduol, Deputy Governor Siaya. I think we need alternative dispute resolution mechanism, not to bring village politics at national level, not to bring serious, non-serious issues. In this case, I would wish, you know, Mother Teresa says, together we can do great things. It is through supporting deputy governors, we need to understand our place in devolution, to support our governors, to support the county governments, to deliver on the mandate of the people. But also there has to be respect in both ways. So it is good, it is good at the county level. We know the best way to sort out any issues that might be there so that devolution can be strong and transformative.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Asante sana. Honorable Naomi Wako, woman rep Marsabit and former senator. His Excellency Professor Kivuda Kibwana, former Governor Makueni. His Excellency Wycliffe Wangamati, former Governor Bungoma. His Excellency Francis Mwangangi, Deputy Governor Machakos, and Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Governance Watch. Thank you so much for having this conversation. This is an important conversation, and thank you all for all the feedback that you've sent through. Coming up next, right after this, is DJ Gigi and Willis Bazura Buru on his final show, his final bow. I don't know what he's gonna do. This is the last Willis show, then he's already here jumping somewhere konyuma, but let's take that break, then they come in.